Boom, shakalaka boom. We've tuned in to the free range human show of choice. This is the Clay Edwards Show. It is hour 2 of the most incendiary show on the radio and online. I like to claim. I don't know. Maybe there's something else out there. Y'all have to send it to me if it is. I like incendiary content. So please engage me with that. This segment is going to be brought to you by our friends over at Ellis Autoplex. Man, be sure to check out Casey and the team today at ellisautoplex.com, located on Highway 471 in Flowood, Mississippi. Great selection of great selection of pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. But what they specialize in is four-door, four-wheel drive trucks, American made, and others, I guess. But swing by there, check them out today. And don't forget, they do, in fact, buy vehicles. They will make you a fair market value offer and cut you a check today. You don't have to deal with the marketplace maniacs, the Craigslist crazies, the bogus checks, all that stuff. There's such an epidemic of that going on right now. You would think people would learn, but they don't. And you're not going to have to worry about none of that when you go sell your vehicle to Ellis Autoplex. And they're also now doing major automotive repairs. If you got something seriously wrong with your vehicle, swing by there and let them check it out. They're not doing like oil changes and stuff of that nature, but like major repairs, like, stuff like alternators, transmissions, engines. They got you covered right there in Rankin County. Ellis Autoplex, Highway 471, right down there close to Highway 25 on that end of 471 in that little stretch that's in Flowood there, right across from Frierson's and the Back Porch Crawfish Hut. All right. You may recognize the man sitting here in studio if you're watching us on the live stream on Facebook, X, YouTube, Rumble, and we were on TikTok. I don't know if we still are after talking.
Open question.
Yeah, after suggesting that the trans thing may in fact be a bit of a grift.
Have they changed this policy since Trump's kind of helped them out? Like,
I don't know.
They changed it. They're like, we have to switch to conservative filtering now.
I sure hope so.
They're doing
probably. The answer is probably.
Well, I saw where Satan himself is in the running to buy it, that being Bill Gates. So I don't know.
Jeez.
I don't know. We shall see. But we've got State Auditor Shad White here in the studio. This is the second time Shad's been in the studio, and I think the third time he's been on the show. He called in on election night and hung out with us for a little while. We appreciate that. Shad, we were right that night. We were on.
Thank goodness we were right.
Team Trump. Sean he picked the other side.
Sorry, Sean.
Yeah, but I didn't vote for the other side.
He didn't vote for him.
I did vote for the Libertarian candidate, though. I can't remember that guy's name.
I was about to ask you, who did you vote for? What was his name?
I cannot remember his name.
Yeah.
Chase something.
Oliver.
Yeah, that's right. Chase Oliver. Thank you.
So, fun fact: I interviewed Chase Oliver.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me that night.
It was before he was the nominee, but he was running. Yeah. He had announced that he was going to run.
Did you tell him all his votes in the country were in the room?
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Pretty much.
I should have.
I did watch some documentary about that recently. That like all the libertarian votes really went to Trump.
Yeah.
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 It was. That was one of Trump's best moves, in my opinion. Was going and speaking at their convention and promising to let that dude out that started the Silk Road thing, and following up on that day 1, day 2, like he did. Look, man, it's been promises made, promises kept, and look, Trump, he's just doing what he said he would do. Maybe court strikes stuff down. That's not his. He can't control that.
Yep.
But I mean, I don't think you've ever seen. Sean's a bit of a presidential historian. Shad, you may be too, but I don't think you've ever seen a president accomplish as much as he has as far as promises made, promises kept in a week.
There was actually an article I read, you guys will hate it, but I was reading the New York Times this morning and about the breakneck speed.
Boo.
Of the well, it actually said it was kind of a strategy. It was he's done so many things so quickly that the Democrats don't know how to respond, because it's kind of like you're getting suffocated with all the new stuff.
Flood the zone.
You can't respond quick enough. It was pretty interesting.
That was some advice. He's actually a convicted murderer now. You remember Napoleon Edwards, the cipher voice, the guy, the local guy that killed the guy, but he used to have a podcast and radio show and all that stuff. What he told me early on, we just did a radio show together, and I was just kind of getting into posting what you would call controversial stuff online, and I asked him how he dealt with it. He said, "Oh, just keep posting more. Just flood the zone."
Yeah.
He said, by the time you've posted 10 more things, they forgot about the first thing that may have been a little more controversial.
It's kind of was the idea here. That's what they were explaining in the article. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I went with was, just flood the zone. That's kind of what you're doing, Shad.
And then kill someone. Wait, that's Napoleon, not you.
There's a line there. What the zone needs, we got to stop the zone right there.
Well, it's like I hate having to reference a guy that did something so terrible, but also, I can't leave that part out of my story.
Sure.
Because he was a very integral part of that before he lost his dang mind.
Yeah.
And there's an important insight there about being on offense, and President Trump has clearly mastered that. I think some of that comes from being in office 4 years and realizing, oh, look, well, I've got this one shot to do this right. Let me just do it. Let me push out everything that I want to get done, and then if people stand in my way, then fine. But he's clearly mastered this art. And I think you're just going to see a very, very active 18 months. And the legislation's coming too. So all the stuff that we've seen so far has been executive orders, but the next round is going to be, bills in Congress to lower the taxes again, or keep the Trump tax cuts, do something on the border, whatever it may be. You're going to see that happen next, I think.
Well, I tell you what, there's nobody more excited than the guy speaking right now, myself. Yeah. I'm very excited to see it all happen. And 4 years of losing, now we got a chance to have 4 to 12 years of winning. I'm super excited to see what comes from it. And I hope that he's able to change enough minds, even detractors that can sit there and say, hey, I disagree with maybe this, but you know what, there's more money in my pocketbook and everything's safer. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we can make that happen. Shad, you've been making a lot happen, brother.
It's just a normal week in the auditor's office. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I was waiting for you in that hearing to say to Senator Polk, R. Favre. I was just waiting. I was just waiting for that. I was watching. I was like, come on, man. Because you're always funny on Twitter and Facebook. And I was like, I'm just waiting for this. But, Republican Favre, because he represents a district that the senator that they were having to dispute with,
I caught that.
I was like, R. Favre. This guy's definitely got Favre's interest at heart.
The thing I wanted to ask, I just didn't feel like it was the appropriate time. The thing I wanted to ask was, okay, well, how many of your constituents are poor, or how many of your constituents pay taxes? Because those are the actual victims of the welfare scandal. Yeah. And if you're not willing to stand up and ask some tough questions in defense of all those taxpayers, the men and women who just go to work every day, they pay their taxes, they go shop at Walmart, they send their kids to school, they go to church, they're just trying to follow the rules and do the right thing. If you're not going to stand up for them, and you're instead just going to stand up for one person that you may know who's famous, what kind of representative are you? That's not the kind of person that I vote for. But look, his constituents can make their own decisions about whether they like him or not.
Yeah, I thought that he really lost me the second he went to the formula that you used to come up with what the penalties and whatnot that Favre voted. And let me ask this, and you may or may not be able to answer this because it's currently in litigation. Was there something differently done to figure up his debt versus somebody else's?
No, our statute tells us how to calculate interest, and without getting super nerdy and into the weeds, it's basically 1% per month interest, non-aggregated. So that means that we don't add any interest back into the principal. That's set by law. So that's just kind of the way we do it. And then we track our investigative hours and that kind of thing. But really, I mean, the big picture point here is, why are we asking questions about things like that, as opposed to asking questions about how much waste there is in state government, or how did this welfare scandal happen, and all of those big picture things that matter to normal people out there every single day. They want to know their taxpayer dollars are being spent the right way. They want to know that their taxpayer dollars are not being wasted by state government. So I'd love it if the state legislature, specifically Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann and his chairman, if they would engage on that question. I think the House is engaged on those kinds of questions if you look at some of the bills that have been filed over there. But I'm still waiting on state Senate leadership to really take up the findings that we've had over the course of the past 2 or 3 years and start crafting legislation to fix some of these problems. People are just tired of it. People are tired of watching their state government waste money, and there are ways to fix it, but we got to have legislative support in order to get it done.
It does feel like the House side is just more common sense.
Yeah.
Right now. I just feel like it's just a little more based common sense type stuff comes out of there, where I just see some of the things on the Senate side and it really just makes me scratch my head.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I loved your response to Polk, and I waited intentionally to this morning to listen to that thing.
Sure.
Because I wanted it to be top of mind. I'd read a little bit, but I listened to it all the way in from Brandon this morning and finished it up in the parking lot out here. And I love the fire that you bring to the table. And I'm not just in here waxing poetically for the sake of it. When he even tried to suggest or something about you maybe having a family member associated with that firm.
You weren't happy about that.
You can't say that.
No.
You cannot say that stuff with that. Like I don't run out there and have a press conference and say, hey, I heard John Polk cheated on his taxes. Like you can't just say rumors out loud, frame them as a question, and then act like that's a normal thing to do in public life. And look, I probably would have a little more patience if he had done that about me, if he had said something false about me and framed it as a question. But when you do that to my wife, we got a bigger problem all of a sudden. And not only that, but she's not a public figure. I'm a public figure. You want to yell at me and Kroger in the milk aisle? Fire away, brother. Like I signed up for this, but don't come after my wife and her business interests when you are literally making up the rumor and then asserting the rumor as a question. It's not the way you handle business. And you know, I told him the truth in the hearing, which is that if you say that as a sentence, if you say that's happened, it's not true, and I'm going to sue you because that's my only recourse at that point. You said it out loud, and I have no other option but to say you can't defame my wife in front of everybody. Come on.
Yeah, I get. Was that some scuttlebutt that was going on the internet or something? People were suggesting maybe.
Yeah. So my wife worked at a consulting firm that was a competitor to Boston Consulting Group, not Boston Consulting Group. And so for some reason on the internet, of course, it got turned around. Yeah, it's like my wife worked for Reebok and I bought a bunch of Nikes. Like then it got turned around. They're like, oh, Shad's wife worked for Nike and he bought a bunch of Nikes with taxpayer money. Well, no, it's the exact opposite of that. And again, like his job as a representative is not to just read something on the internet and be like, oh, I guess that's true. Maybe I should bring that up in a formal hearing in the state Senate. His job is to sort through fact from fiction and ask good questions based on that. So really, it all gets back to one of the things I said toward the end of that hearing, which is this is not actually a debate about the substance. This is really just about politics, right? Like if this were a debate about substance, he would have known not to ask that question. He wouldn't have asked some of the other questions that he asked. Really, this is about the fact that his buddy, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, wants to run for governor, worst kept secret in Jackson. And he sees me as the person standing in the way of that. And so surprise, surprise, his key committee chairmen are going to come after me. And of course, it happened in that hearing. But then it also happened with the bill that was dropped a couple of days later. And all of that stuff is just wild when you think about it. But also, it's totally expected if you just know how politics works.
I'm sorry.
Well, let's take a break real quick.
Yeah.
When we come back, I know here in the studio, we've got State Auditor Shad White and my good friend, Sean Yerkeron, former Hinds County ADA, that's Assistant District Attorney for 10 plus years. So we really love and enjoy Sean's experience and expertise when we have these kind of conversations. Sean, I think you had a question you were wanting to ask the auditor before we went to break.
Yeah, it was about this bill, the one that's in the Senate that's going to limit your powers. And I'm not super well versed on it, but there's a couple of things I did pick up. So it is going to prevent your ability to audit people that receive less than $10 million. Is that right?
Yep. So for some entities, so we can still audit government entities, but it limits our ability to audit nonprofits and for-profit companies below some thresholds.
Okay. And that would be just like the sub-guarantees in the TANF scandal. Is that correct?
Absolutely. But, here's another example. If you limit our ability to audit for-profit companies that get taxpayer funds, we've had even bigger cases into for-profit companies who receive taxpayer funds. I'll give you a very, very simple example. A few years ago, we did an investigation on a pharmacy benefit manager, which is a corporation, a for-profit company that was receiving taxpayer funds. And what we found, we did a very similar investigation to something being done by the Ohio State Auditor at the same time. What we found is some examples of billing outside of what the contract allowed. So at the end of the investigation, on the same day, that company cut an $88 million check to Ohio, and they cut a $55 million check to Mississippi. It was the largest civil recovery in the history of the state auditor's office that resulted from a state auditor's investigation and made the Wall Street Journal. Big, important deal for taxpayers here in Mississippi. And when you start cutting off my ability to do those kinds of audits of for-profit companies, we're going to have problems. Those folks are not dumb. They're going to read this legislation and say, hey, guess what? As long as we run our money through an LLC that's getting below this amount of funds, we're good. State auditor can't even walk in here. So we just we don't need to be doing stuff like this. And really, for anything that you'll ask me about in the bill, Sean, my big picture question is why?
Yeah, that's what's my
Why
next
are we
question.
doing
That was my
this?
next question. That was
Is
my next
there a
question.
reason for cutting off my
Yeah.
ability to do that, other than maybe these politicians are worried about something, or they're protecting one of their lobbyist buddies or somebody else? What is the reason here? I still can't figure it out.
That's what, because I mean, I was thinking about, with your exchange with Senator Polk and him bringing up his constituent Brett Favre, and this would include money that went to Favre if that were something that happened now, post this bill, or money that happened to anybody that I guess Nancy knew used as a sub grantee, because they were all under $10 million.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we're talking about the DiBiase's, those groups, and everybody like that. So it just seems to be that was going to be my next question. What would be the purpose of limiting your ability to do that?
I cannot wait for the lieutenant governor to come on your show and answer that question. That's great. I'm really excited to see that happen. Please call me and I'll tune in that day. I have the same question, and I can't get answers from anybody, which leads me to believe that the only answer is either somebody's afraid of something. So some politician has somebody or something like that, and they're afraid of something, or this is just about politics. This is just, well, we got to cut Shad off at the knees so that he can't do his job, so that there are no more headlines, so he's not a threat to run against me for governor. It's one of those two things. Maybe it's both of them. I don't know. But I'm left grasping at straws here, because I can't think of a real policy reason for doing that right there.
Well, I mean, because you don't have prosecutorial authority. You can just refer to AG's office, DA's offices, and whatnot. I mean, so I would think that if I'm writing a bill, I'd want to expand your authority to audit things, because conservatives, generally, y'all are conservatives, are about getting rid of government waste.
That's where my brain is at over here.
Yeah, I mean,
why are we doing? We should be doing the opposite.
Right, give you more power, and maybe even expand that into prosecutorial power. I think might not even be a bad idea, considering where. I don't know what I know it's a little bit, because you have to jump around to different jurisdictions, AG's office, the DA's office.
Absolutely,
if you had an in-house team, it seemed like that might run more efficiently.
Yeah. I read a poll this morning that said that of President Trump's first executive orders, the most popular have been the ones cutting down on waste and corruption in the federal government. That's the most universally popular among Republicans and Democrats and independents. So we got that going on in the federal government, which is great. We got a president who is finally keying in on waste and corruption inside the federal government. And down here in Mississippi, it's the exact opposite. Our establishment politicians are drafting bills in the dead of night to try to strip away authority from the state auditor's office. And look, if they don't like me, that's fine. Lots of people don't like me. If they don't like how I look, that's fine. Don't care. But think about what you're doing to the entity, the office of the state auditor. I'm not always going to be in this office. Don't strip away authority from the office of the state auditor, because this is the watchdog. This was designed under our constitutional system of government to be the watchdog of taxpayer funds. Don't take authority away from it. It just makes no sense at all.
And you spoke about President Trump, where Clay and I were talking about that last segment. One of the things I like that he's done the last week is say, I'm going to do this buyout for federal employees. I thought it was really a great idea. Like, okay, how much can we save by doing that? And so I think that goes to kind of your point here. I mean, or what Clay and I were saying, like, you would want to make your authority more. I mean, how does it hurt by giving you more power to audit? Because that just helps us all, I think, in the end of the day. So it doesn't really make any sense.
I may hire you as my lobbyist, Sean. This is going well.
I mean, I'm just the way I'm looking at it, I don't see what would be the point, in all honesty, like to limit your authority to do this. We all want to cut out waste, whether you're a conservative or liberal. We all don't. I mean, this is all our money that we're paying. This is our tax money.
I can see where people would say, that the office doesn't need prosecutorial power, because then you could say that audits and stuff could get political, and you probably want to remove yourself from that. I would think.
It's a great point. Like for example, our sheriffs in our counties don't also have prosecutorial authority. Sheriffs can go out and investigate a burglary or a murder, but they have to work with the prosecutor to get the actual case done. I'm fine with that. I think that's totally fine. Just don't take away my ability to go find the burglars. That's what you don't want. What you want is the ability to keep doing your part of the job.
Like, I like that idea when conservatives have power, but I don't know that I would like that idea if the Democrats had power. I think you need to keep that same energy both ways. Like, I don't, let's not give too many other people prosecutorial power that don't already have it. You just want you want to leave some. You don't want things getting politicized. We've seen what can happen the last 4 years when things. I'm not saying you would do that. I'm just saying in general.
I see your point, and that is a good point, I think. But the only thing I would say to that, having worked the DA's office for a long time and a much shorter time at the Attorney General's office, when you're working in a DA's office, you're not as familiar with the kind of crimes that Shad investigates.
That's a great point.
I'll tell you, to this day, I'm a street crime prosecutor. I'm now a defense attorney. I do, murders, drug crimes, those kinds of, that's what I know how to do.
Most ADAs are.
That's what
most
I know how to
ADAs
do.
are street crime guys.
Yeah. And so your guys' stuff is a little more specialized, I think. And so if you had some, or at least maybe an attorney general, I remember at one point, Jim Hood was going to point me to the auditor's office, and I eventually did not do it because I was like, I don't want to read all those numbers. Yeah, I did not want to do that.
You left out.
Yeah, do you guys have attorneys from the AG's office there? Yeah.
Well, no, not from the AG's office. But what we do have is there's part of my statute that says I can hire attorneys. So we have attorneys in-house, and this is how we help the ADAs, the prosecutors who are not used to our kinds of cases. We have a couple of attorneys in our investigations division. And so when we're doing an investigation, we're not just going out and digging up all the facts. We're helping to prepare a file that a lawyer can read and understand and say, here are the statutes. Here's how these people violated the statutes. We'll help you prep up for a grand jury or trial or whatever it may be. Now, we can't prosecute it because we're not allowed to do that under the statute, but we have actual real life lawyers, both one is a former prosecutor, one has prosecutorial experience. He worked in a prosecutor's office during law school. We've got two good lawyers in our investigations division who help those prosecutors. So that's how we've kind of bridged that gap between our weird cases and the stuff that normal prosecutors do on a day-to-day basis.
We've got a question here from Bobby on YouTube. Shout out to Bobby. Is there anything you can do to stop the bill that's trying to strip the powers? I guess you call your representatives and tell them that you don't want them to vote on this bill.
Yeah, specifically
you vote no on this bill.
That's right. Specifically your state senator. So the bill, I'm calling the bill the Mississippi Corruption Act because that's a much more fun title than the actual title. The bill is actually Senate Bill 2847. And look, the legislative leadership in Lieutenant Governor Hosemann's office, they're not going to listen to me, obviously, but who they will listen to is their constituents and taxpayers and voters in Mississippi. So if you want to call his office, his number is 601-359-3200. And you could just tell them, we don't like the Mississippi Corruption Act of 2025, and we want you to kill it. We want you to tell your key chairman who wrote this bill to kill it in committee, kill his own bill in his own committee.
Wait, it's called the Mississippi Corruption Act?
You've
called it that. I was like, does it really call that? Okay.
You're free to repeat that, Sean, as many times as you like.
I was like,
that's what I wrote down here.
I don't know. I didn't know.
Whose office is it?
Lieutenant Governor's office.
That's Lieutenant Governor's office.
So that's the person that I would be calling if I were a constituent, because he appoints the committee chairman. One of his key committee chairmen drafted this bill. The Lieutenant Governor's office has the ability, once a bill is drafted, they choose which committee to send it to. So a lot of times if they want to kill a bill, they're going to send it to 2 or 3 different committees, which basically kills it. In this case, he decided to send it to one committee. He decided to send it to the committee that is run by the dude who wrote the bill. So he's signaling that this is a good bill. Let's keep going forward with it. And right now is the time when we need to get folks engaged, saying that this is a bad idea. Actually, in the break, I was texting with the director of the State Financial Officers Foundation. This is a big national organization that a bunch of the state auditors and state treasurers belong to. He reached out to me this morning and he said, I cannot believe this bill to strip your powers. It's absolutely insane. This is the kind of stuff that, this is the reason our organization exists, to fight stuff like this. What can we do to help? So if this bill keeps going down the road, you'll probably see a group of auditors and state treasurers from around the country come in and say, hey, you can't do this in Mississippi. Once this starts in one state, what are we going to do? Take away state auditors' powers in every state? Then you really got a problem. Then you have a nationwide problem.
You set a precedence with this bill.
100%.
And where you have corrupt state politicians that say, oh, we can just strip the auditor of his powers. Heck yeah.
Yeah. Why didn't we think of that?
Let's do away with the watchdog. All right, let's take a break real quick. We got all right. Shad, appreciate you coming in this morning. Look, one of the things we were just talking about off air, and I was just saying this is a conversation I've had with some folks. If the lieutenant governor and his cronies' intentions are to, besmirch you, I guess, I think they're doing the complete opposite, because I think here, as I told you the other day, I said, I feel like my radio show touches your most common average Mississippian. Mm-hmm. Not just your country club conservatives that you would think listen to conservative talk radio. I think we reach a lot of normies blue collar folks that get up and go to work every day and don't necessarily keep up with the nuts and bolts of what goes on at the Capitol. And coming off what we just saw with Trump the last 4 years, really the last 10 years, but in particular the last 4 years, people going after him and trying to mold a narrative about him. I think all they're doing is making you even more popular and a sympathetic figure of sorts. Maybe that's not the best word, but for lack of a better word, I think they're making you a sympathetic figure and a fighter for the people. And because that's how it's coming across when big government tells the state auditor, you know what, you don't look over here and we'll take your powers away if you do. Your average Joe out there, Bubba, is hold on now, those are my tax money. Why can't the state auditor look at that? Shad's fighting for me. Is what they're doing. I think it's going to blow up in their face.
I think you're absolutely right. I think in what you were talking about before about, Senator Polk and Favre, right? He comes across as like, he's talking about, what about my constituent Brett Favre? Well, why is that the number one guy you're concerned about? I mean, this was a huge scandal where taxpayers got taken by tons of different groups. But that makes you look like you're defending you're defending the elitists in society is the way they come across. And he's on Delbert's side. This looks nothing but bad, in my opinion.
It's kind of interesting because in the auditor's office, we tend to just wake up and like do the job. You wake up and you say, all right, here are cases that we've got to debate today. As this bill was being dropped, for example, we had an all hands meeting of our key investigators and our top 2 or 3 CPAs to talk about a big case that we've potentially got coming up here in 2 or 3 weeks. So it's really weird coming to the outside world and seeing that folks got really upset about this bill, as they should have, and then going back to the office and realizing, we're not actually trying to split the atom here. We're just trying to do the very specific job that we were handed by the taxpayers and by the Constitution. So anyway, that's maybe the reason it rubs me the wrong way when you see a bill like this is we wake up in the auditor's office, the 130 men and women who work there, we try to do the right thing. We try to do our jobs consistently every day. And then when somebody comes along and says, hey, I want to take some of your power from you, this is just getting in our way of doing the job. And I'll say this too, we talked about this a little bit off the air. Some folks were surprised that a bill like this got dropped. Look, I've been dealing with the Jackson swamp for the last 2 years. And, people have asked me, well, why are you always fighting with this person or that person or whatever it is? And I have to say, well, if somebody sues you to stop you from getting back misspent money, would you fight with them? If somebody tells you you're legally not allowed to look for waste, would you fight with them? If somebody writes a bill that tries to strip you of audit powers, would you fight with them? Yeah, I mean, you better be fighting. If you're not, you need to go find a new job. This is not the job for you. And so I don't wake up feeling like I'm ready to run into a fight with every person every single day. I wake up thinking, let me do my job, get out of my way, let us cook, as the kids say. Just get out of my way and let me do my job. And if folks are going to get in the way, then yeah, we're going to have a problem.
I don't normally take calls when we have a guest, but this is we got a call here on the Mazda Jackson phone line from Miss Angela. She's up in the Delta. She is a good representation of what I feel like are normal, everyday Mississippians. I'm curious what questions she may have. Hey, is this Angela? Hey,
Mike Magazine. How y'all doing this morning?
Hey, we're doing good, Angela. You got about a minute here. I'd get your question with Shad in for us. Great to hear from you, by the way. Thank you for listening.
Well, my question is about rhinos. But first, I want to say, Shad, I'm so glad you came to a platform like Clay Edwards because we're overlooked a lot. But I wanted to let you know that we refer to you as the ghost of Mississippi up here in the Delta because we never know when you're going to drop down. But my question is, how and I like to hey, somebody get Shad White in here. That's what I say when, I'm on my show. But my question is, how do you feel about Mississippi rhinos? Because they do exist.
It's a great question. And I get frustrated with it because our voters send very clear messages about what they care about. So, for example, in the presidential election, they send very clear messages about wanting to stop illegal immigration, about some of this crazy gender ideology that you see. Very, very, unmissable messages from our folks. And you got some folks we've got some good representatives in Jackson, but you got some folks up there who just don't want to deal with these issues. And that's the stuff that bothers me is listen to your voters, listen to the people who elected you to do a job and spend your time working on those issues. you know, that's the other thing that kind of makes this bill about the auditor's office frustrating is like, you spent your time writing this bill. What could you have been doing with your time instead of doing something like this? So I think your caller's got a great point.
In my opinion, it's as ridiculous as the conception begins at erection act, as far as just wasting time. You know, and I took Miss Angela's call because she's a bit of a unicorn, or at least what we deem as a unicorn in Mississippi. That's a black lady from the Mississippi Delta with conservative values. So that's a bad way to word that, but she leans to the right on a lot of issues. And I don't know her politics to be exact, but I know her well enough. She's been on the show before. And I did that because I think that she may speak for more people than we think.
Yeah.
And I think people are waking up and saying, hey, we've been doing it this way for a long time and it ain't working anymore.
Yep.
What's going on over here? How can I get involved over here and have a voice, at least in because let's be honest, if you're a Democrat and openly a Democrat in Mississippi on a statewide, you know, you don't have a whole lot of options there.
Yep.
Just the way the state's laid out. So to come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to participate in this. How do I do that with the people who are already there? And that's something I had to realize a few years ago too, as a guy that likes grassroots candidates versus your mainstream, so to say. It's like, all right, well, this is who we got. How do I work with them?
Yep.
I really appreciate her calling in like that. I was curious in what she had to.
Well, you saw that in Trump, right? I mean, this past election, he got elected with a broader coalition than any other Republican in my lifetime, at least. And look,
probably
folks,
ever, really.
maybe
I mean,
ever,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
People respond to that because they see him as challenging the establishment politicians and the status quo bureaucrats. And look, I'm here to tell you, folks know this. If you think that there are just establishment politicians in Washington, D.C. and status quo bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. and not down here in Jackson, you have missed the boat. We got those same kinds of personalities down here. And that's why when you see those folks form a swamp and go after somebody, they are signaling to you who they fear the most. That's exactly what's going on with us in this bill right now. So if folks are fed up with it, the kinds of folks who, regardless of what you may look like or who you voted for in the past, voted for President Trump, if you're fed up with the status quo and you voted for President Trump, I'm here to tell you it's time to find candidates at the state level who reflect that, who reflect his same instincts, because we got a lot of waste, we got a lot of corruption, we got a lot of problems in Mississippi too.
Yeah.
I mean, and we see it everywhere. It's not just even the state level or local level. With Clay and I's main thing here is we talk about Jackson politics with the mayor of Jackson. And I mean, that's all we see is a constant den of corruption. And, you know, there needs to be people watching that. I mean, people like that. I'm glad that we kind of feel that we do that on the radio. We've been calling those two, Jody and Chokwe, out for before anybody really was, and kind of put our neck on the lines on that and don't regret doing that. But people need to say something about this kind of stuff.
Do you think the mayor's going to file to run again?
That was, we just talked about. No, we both do not think so.
Interesting.
Yeah,
We both do not think so.
Like I'll take a $100 bet from anybody that wants to do it. No, I guess that's illegal. I can't do that. But in theory, I would take a $100 bet. I'll buy you lunch one day at one of our great sponsors here if I'm wrong. But I don't think he will, because I think he's got too much to lose. I think it's too much of a roadmap, as Sean has pointed out.
Yeah.
But the fly on the wall is his ego.
That's the problem.
Yeah. We're dealing with. We got to take one last break. We got Shad White here with the state auditor. We'll be right back on the Clay Edwards Show with Sean Yerkron and State Auditor Shad White on WYAB, the only conservative talk station in the state of Mississippi that doesn't take taxpayer dollars. We'll be right back. Welcome back in to the Clay Edwards Show here with Sean Yerkron and State Auditor Shad White. We got about a minute and a half left here with the auditor. Shad, appreciate you coming back on the show, brother. We're obviously going to be following this. Guys, reach out to the Lieutenant Governor's office and let them know that you want the Mississippi Corruption Act stopped. What was the bill number again? I put my notes up. SB
2847.
2847.
Yep.
Shad, you got any words you want to close us out with, brother?
No, man, I really appreciate what y'all are doing. Can I tell you a Clay Edwards Show story real fast? So after the first time I came on, I was walking through my neighborhood with my daughter, and this is like 4 or 5 doors down from me. And this woman was out, she was checking her mail, and she looked at me, and I mean, I had like a ball cap on, I hadn't shaved, like I was not looking like I look right now. And she said, "I know you from somewhere." And I said, "Well, we live just like 3 or 4 doors right down there, and I run through the neighborhood. I walk through the neighborhood all the time. She's like, no, that's not it. And I said, I'm the state auditor, so sometimes on like local news I'm on, and she's like, no, that's not it. I don't watch local news. and as she's saying that, she said, oh wait, I know where it was. You were on the Clay Edwards show. And I was like, yes, I was actually on the Clay Edwards show. So you're talking about reaching the normies. This is a person who like is getting her news through you. She's probably watching Fox News at night, and she's getting her local news through you.
Love it, man. Love it. Good, guys. To everybody out there listening, thank y'all so much for little anecdotes like that. That's why I get up and do this, because I know we're reaching those people. Shad, thank you. Sean, thank you. See y'all tomorrow. Peace.